Hi. I'm about to start the live for today. I'm going to just give a moment to make sure all the platforms are up and running and ready to go. Otherwise than that, I will begin. So today, the topic for today is idea generation. And I had quite a few queries over the last few lives about this particularly. How do you get to a place where you can generate an idea, whether for a potential business that you may want to have, a particular project that you have, or even in some cases, a project for a company you work for. And I thought I would start by kind of explain a little bit about what idea generation is. And then I'm going to go into some of the major, major mistakes. Some of my top mistakes that I've found over the years that many entrepreneurs, whether socially or for profit, and also those who are looking to switch professions or enhance their profession, some of the mistakes that they make when they're generating an idea for a particular project or a business venture. So I'm going to go into kind of explain a little bit about idea generation and essentially to break it down in the shortest version possible. Idea generation is essentially you coming up with a particular concept, preferably one that is of course innovative and in many instances at the top tiers groundbreaking. You're then developing that concept and you're essentially communicating it in some way. So, creating a concept or coming up with some particular idea that could either solve a problem, enhance a situation, or essentially something that persons may not even think they need, but this idea or concept is fulfilling that need is really what the creative process is all about. But the difference in that transition from creating the concept versus developing the idea itself is getting the idea literally from concept to reality. And in many instances, one of the steps that is missing idea generation is the process building. So, how do you develop not only the concept itself, but the process in order to bring the idea to reality? So it's almost like a two prong step where you have these particular concepts, but then you're also developing a process through which you can bring that process or sorry, through which you can bring that concept to a real idea that can either monetize, enhance, or solve some problem or build some need that a customer or potential boss or any sector can benefit from. And then get into the place where now you can also communicate that. Because an idea really is should be one that not only is simple enough that in a very short space of time you should be able to demonstrate exactly what it is, how it works, how it will benefit, who will benefit, what are the advantages of this particular idea. You should be able to communicate that clearly and effectively so that any dummy, any nimwit could repeat it and effectively be able to share your idea with others. You also want an idea that is not only simple enough but catchy in its communication enough that persons remember what this particular idea is or feel drawn or compelled to tell others about that idea. And the only way that's going to happen is if you are able to create one that is not only strong and solid in its concept, but also one that is simple enough that anybody can communicate or tell others about it. But what I want to go into now is my top five mistakes that I've seen over the years, that persons made the mistake of not fulfilling in the idea generation process. So I'm going to just quickly point out the first one. And the first main one, what I've found that often happens is that we don't brainstorm enough. We usually come up with one idea and we run with it. And automatically we assume or have this perception that that one idea is what's going to stick. That one idea is what's going to generate huge profits. That one idea is what's going to get our boss, you know, pushing us to the next level or giving us that promotion. That one idea. And very often, what we don't do is brainstorm to see what are the other possibilities or what else could work. What are some of the things that maybe we can add to this idea, or what are even some of the things we can subtract? We don't do enough brainstorming. And very often, when we do brainstorming, we do it so loosely that we brainstorm with thoughts. Understand what I mean? So, brainstorming typically, if done correctly, is really a brain dump. Any and everything that comes to your mind based around a particular concept, you should literally just put it on paper or put it down somewhere to see or ensure that you're getting all the possible, even the craziest ideas. What you think might be super crazy, you should put it down. And essentially, that gets you to a place where you don't limit your thinking or you don't limit your thoughts by what you think would work, but more so putting down ideas or concepts that potentially could be part of that one idea. And when we don't do that process or when we don't start with that process, what ends up happening is that very often the idea that we thought was so groundbreaking really isn't. The idea that we thought was so amazing and the idea that we thought really could be the one to make us join the two comma club flops essentially. Either we lose interest or we feel like we're not as consistent, and when we're not as consistent, no money comes in, no money is generated from it. We feel like others don't understand it, but what we fail to do is expand our thoughts of what that idea could be and bring in other things that could potentially add to it. And that goes to number two for me. The number two to that is market research. We don't do sufficient market research. And in a lot of cases, market research starts at the very basics. So very often we have an idea or concept that we think is so groundbreaking and we isolate ourselves in our mind thinking that it's great and no one else is to hear this until we bring it to market. Very often what happens in situations like that is that you, because you don't have more than one brain looking at this thing and giving input, very often what the thing that we think is so amazing usually isn't. And I remember even coming up with the concept. I don't know if you guys remember, just recently I spoke to you about when I first started a business with some of my friends. And I remember, we used to come up with great concepts. We came up with many ideas, but we did this collectively. And in a lot of ways, what we would do before we even started to promote an event or any kind of activity, we would always ask the persons who went to the last one. So, how was that for you? What is it that you liked? What didn't you like? What would you add? Is this theme okay? We're thinking of doing this and we're thinking of this particular concept. Would you come to something like that? Um, and even talking to them or finding out from them what are some of the things that are happening in the event space that you feel could happen more, or what are some of the things that you think are missing in the event space. And that is where we kind of pull from that information, and we told ourselves, well, look, yes, there's about five of us here, but there's 100 patrons that come to our events, hundreds of patrons. We should be talking to them because they're the experts here. They're the ones who are going to spend their money. So our biggest thing was making sure that we got into their head. We kind of got to understand how they think, what they look for, what kind of experiences they wanted to feel or to see. And we worked with that, tweaked it a bit, put our flavor on it to make some of the best events that they have ever seen, right? So understand that it is not just about you. Idea generation, some of that, some of the mistakes we made is that we don't talk enough about those particular concepts or those particular ideas. We feel like if we work in isolation and just launch it, boom, you know, then that's going to be enough, because very often we are scared. I've made that mistake where, you're scared because you feel like someone's going to steal your idea or someone's going to take out your concept and run with it. And yes, that may very well be the case, but I also believe that very often, so one, I believe there's no really new ideas out there. It's really just enhanced products or services, or you're creating some unique twist to something that already exists. That's number one. But on top of that, number two, I feel like if you are you and you understand you well enough and you know your skills and abilities, anybody could come and steal an idea from you. Yes, that is true. But nobody is still you, right? So there may be a million coaches in the world, but not all of them, are maybe have the skills or the abilities that you may have. There may be a million event planners in the world, but what is it that you are putting in the table? What are you putting on the table that's going to make you stand out from them? And the idea generation phase is not about working in isolation. It's about making sure that when you do launch that idea and it does become a reality, whether you're doing it in the corporate world or you're doing it in entrepreneurship, you're ready, and it is one that is sound, and you have done your research in order to make sure that it is, the time is now. Because some ideas are either come to the table too quickly because the market isn't ready for them, or there's not enough research that comes behind it. And that's my number three: research. So yes, part of the idea generation process is almost to filter out what works and what doesn't. And part of filtering out is doing research. Part of that research might be to ensure, you know, that you are one of those unique products or service that exists out there. Whether, no matter the sector you're in, the region you're in, whatever. And also doing research as to if it even makes sense. Because there are some ideas that in reality don't make sense to launch. They don't make sense economically. They don't make sense from a leadership perspective. They don't make sense from a customer base perspective. They just don't make sense. That's just it. Part of that research is now number four, which is checking your competitors. We should always know who is doing what out there, who is offering what out there, how are they doing it, what style are they doing it in, and how receptive are they to the different customer base that they serve, right? So it's not just looking at great websites or seeing great social media handles and doing research from that perspective. So there are a number of ways you can check out your competitors, some of which might be becoming one of their customers. That's also a mistake that some persons make in terms of how they approach a potential competitor, but that's another story for another day. But making sure that you are being as thorough as you can in that idea generation process. And my last point, which is one of those things that persons don't ever really think about, is protecting your IP. Now that you've come to the point where you've actually created an idea that could not only work but could be so unique in its process or in its value or in how you're crafting the particular concept, that you're at a place where you need to protect your IP, your intellectual property. And I've found over the years that persons are very laid back when it comes to protecting what is theirs intellectually and understanding that not just tangible products um, require some form of protection, but also what comes out of your mind was the concepts or the theories or the words you write or speak. um how can you protect them, and looking into how you can protect them when you develop an idea that you know is valuable. I find that we don't play enough emphasis on that, and on top of that, we can be a bit loose when it comes to other person's IP, and we can be a bit laid back when it comes to that. And that's another story. Maybe I'll have a separate live specifically on IP, um and the implications behind intellectual property, which is necessary to focus on or to think about, at least in the idea generation phase, and noting that there are some things that are just not worth the protection. It will cost you probably more to protect than it would to just leave it alone. But in other instances, it's important. So, just as a recap, some of the mistakes that are made are: one, the brainstorming side of it. So, from the very beginning, not limiting your thinking, not feeling like you've come up with this one amazing idea and you don't want to add anything else to the table or any flavor to that sauce. It's important to do sufficient brain dumping prior to coming up with that final idea, and let that be part of the process of sieving out what works and what doesn't. The second part of that is market research. So going out there, speaking to persons, like who's gonna know how this idea is gonna land better than the potential customer that may come your way, or the potential partner that may come your way, or the potential team member that needs to support this. Like, it's important for you to speak about it. It's important for you to be able to clearly communicate it. And if you aren't able to do that, it's probably not the best idea, to be fair. Um, and it's important to also remember that those are the persons who have to either buy it or buy into it in order for the idea to work. So why not speak to them about it and see their thoughts and get their feedback and then sieve and implement? Number three, doing research generally. So understanding the concept, understanding the idea that you want to put on the table, understanding what could and couldn't work. And then number four, checking out your competitors, man. What are they doing in the same space or in the same industry? What is it that they might not be doing? Look at reviews, check and see, how are potential competitors out there really surviving with this particular concept in the market, and how can I make it better? How can I add my skills and abilities? How can I add my sauce, my flavor to this sauce, to ensure that persons buy it or buy into it? And number five is definitely making sure you get to a place that when you do come up with that concept, especially one that is innovative, that you protect your IP around it. Remember, idea generation is a beautiful thing. We all come up with different concepts, we all come up with different ideas, we all come up with different ways of doing things. And very often we may not implement on it, or we may not be as aware of the nugget that we've really come across. And it's important to, as I said before in idea generation, not only to create that concept, but to develop the process in creating that concept and learning a way to communicate it effectively, or learning how to really truly get it over in a short period of time to the right persons. And speaking of that, now I've talked a lot about the market research and going out there and speaking and getting that feedback and looping back. And a big part of that is testing. But you have to be mindful as well that even in testing, make sure you're not speaking to any and everybody. Because yes, I do understand the concept of protecting an idea from the perspective of not being as loose with your lips with the persons that you know may or may not appreciate your particular idea, especially for yourself. However, what you can do is craft the messaging or craft the communication in initial stages about this particular concept in such a way that it isn't necessarily something that can be taken up right away and utilized. So you're not giving them all the formula to your particular recipe, for example, but you might say to them, let's say, for example, you had a tomato sauce. You might say to them, well, you know, I don't know, do you use tomato sauces? Is that something that you utilize normally in your cooking? What kind of tomato sauces do you like? Do you like a more tangy flavored one or a sweeter one? So that's how you're testing without saying, well, I have this particular product. I'm thinking about this. What do you think? So you see, it's all in how you craft a message. It's all in how you put that message together in order for persons to provide you with the feedback that you may need, or provide you with some form, or even if you said, have you ever thought of a hot tomato sauce? Is that even something that ever come across your mind? And they might be like, huh, I've never, but maybe it could work. But it gives you enough information that you will need to go forward and to see if this is something that you can maybe start to prototype and start to test that prototype based on the initial feedback that you've gotten. And sometimes it's not even about talking about a particular product, but it might just be getting the feelings of a customer, like helping a potential customer, partner, supplier to understand a little bit about, maybe, or you understand more so about what their needs and wants are. So you might go to them and you might ask them, how's your typical delivery service? How do you feel about it right now? What's some of the things that you think could improve generally? And that general feedback gives you an understanding of what are some of their pains and what are some of their needs. And you could then come and filter back to your concepts and decide, well, maybe this is something I can add in as value for the potential customer, partner, or supplier that I'm going to work with. It's not just about getting direct information, but more so working around to understand truly the individuals you're working with, and to understand that there's a bigger picture, and sometimes you're filling that gap of that bigger picture. And you should want to really fill the need, or increase or enhance the need that that sector might want, or that sample might want, that market sample might want. Or you should really be pushing to eliminate the pain that they're currently having. So take a step back, think about it. If you Whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a professional in a particular career, when you are coming up just with a project, let's say you're coming up with a community project, take a step back, brainstorm, market research, chat with your potential customer or partnership base, do research on what is happening out there in the market, understand your competitor, and try to do as much research as well in terms of protecting your IP. But be mindful that in idea generation, it is important to not only develop the concept, but to also develop the process and create a way in which you can simply and effectively communicate your idea to the sample that is necessary to either purchase or benefit from this particular idea. So I hope I've been able to add some form of value, especially when it comes to idea generation, because I think some of us get a little stuck and we are a little dazzled by everything that might be happening around us, and we might not realize that we all come up with ideas on a daily basis, but we might not all use those ideas for the purpose of generating a profit or generating or enhancing some part of our career. And in many instances, why we may not do that is the fear of putting ourselves out there or the fear of getting feedback that we might think is going to be negative automatically. What's important in knowing that your idea could either work or not is knowing that the worst answer you could get is no. The worst answer you could get is no. So don't focus on the no. Focus on what if it was yes? What if your answer was yes? What if your customers came and bought right away? What if partners wanted to jump in and invest? What if your boss was absolutely elated by this idea? Like, don't focus on the no, because the worst it could be is no. But the reality is that if you're really passionate and you're really eager and you truly believe that you're solving a problem and you have the confidence in expressing that through communication, other persons will believe it as well. So with that said, I really hope that I've been able to help in some way. And if at any point you feel like this information could benefit an entrepreneur, a professional who's hoping to present some form of project or something that will enhance their particular career or get them to the next level, or you feel like this is something you can do for your community in generating an idea that solves some problem within the community, please feel free to share it with them. Please feel free to comment if you have any additional questions. Please feel free to tell someone or help them to even watch this video and go through the steps with them. You can even have a form of communication about it, and maybe let's have a discussion about it, because there's so many other mistakes that persons make when trying to generate an idea that works, and we can definitely have a dialogue about it. But I'll go back into some of these same points or mistakes that I've stated, in other videos moving forward. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free for you to comment or inbox me. I look forward to speaking to you soon. Until next time.